Hi everyone, it's Darlene. Welcome to this week's card. Today I'm working with a penny black Christmas stamp called Ornamental Noel. You can see it here up close. I slowed it down. And so I'm going to start off by measuring, and I know I measure everything and I probably do it to the extreme, but I just like it to look perfect. So anyway, I'm measuring one line across a ½ inch from each side. So that's ½ inch up and a ½ inch down. Now I'm setting up my Stamp-A-Majig because I want to make sure I stamp this right in the middle because I want to make sure my gold pieces are exactly the same. So I'm going to adhere this to my mat so it doesn't move around. And you see that ribbon that the ornament hangs down from. I'm going to make sure that lines up directly against that ½ inch mark that I made. And then I'm going to ink up my stamp again. And now I've got my Stamp-A-Majig positioned exactly where it needs to be. And when I stamp it, my ribbon will be right there at the top. I used a Sizzix die, but I didn't actually use the die through the Sizzix machine. I just used it as a guide. So if you don't have these ovals, you can just sort of use any sort of shape that you have that you can trace out. And I just did the same distance from each of the letters, so from the L and from the N. And I'm just going to cut this by hand. Alright, now I'm going to start with my coloring. For my ornament, I wanted to do red, and I used 3 different colors, R27, R29, and this is R29 that I'm using right now. Now I'm working my way around all these little snowflakes, which is a little tedious, but it looks good in the end. And it's not too hard to do because the tip is very, very fine on these Copic markers. And as it turns out, now I'm using R27, which looks very, very similar to R29. So when it was all said and done, I actually went back in there with an R39 because I felt like I needed just a shade darker. When I'm coloring red using Copics, I generally use a pink as my lightest color. So usually it's a RV13 or an RV14 because when you blend it against the red, it actually does look like a light red. I mean, I guess that's what pink is light red, so that's what I tend to use when I'm doing reds. I'm just going back between my R27 and my RV14 to make sure that my highlight is just right. And you want your highlight to be a little bit rounded, just like the ball is. And here I am with the R39, adding just that dark shadow. I'm going to add a little bit more shadow on the left than on the right because my light source is coming from the right. So as you can see, I'm doing a thinner line on the right hand side. And I think I really needed this darker color to make it look a little bit, to make it pop a little bit more. Now for the snowflakes, I decided to color them yellow, and rather than try to get a Copic inside those tiny, tiny little lines, I decided to use a Stampin' Up! Marker. So this is Daffodil Delight. I'm using the fine tip. Now for the band, I'm using yellow Copics, and I'm going to start with an all over Y11, which is my lightest color, and then I use Y17 on the edges, again a thicker edge on the left than on the right. And then I'm blending that all together with a Y15, then I come back in with my Y11. And do the same thing for that top thing. Now for the ribbon and the bows and all that, I didn't shade it or anything, I just colored it in. So I used the R29, and then I used my Daffodil Delight to go in there and color the yellow pieces. Alright, now for the greens. I'm using 2 greens and a 0. So for the N, my first letter, I started doing the all over light color and then going back in there with the darker as I usually do. But I actually changed that on the second letter to where I didn't do the all over light first. Anyway, so here is the darker color, the GO5, and it's sort of, I'm sorry, GO9, and it's sort of, sorry the focus is getting all a little messed up there. But basically the light's on the right, so I'm just coloring some dark areas on the left. And now here I slowed it down because I wanted to show you I took my 0 and I just slowly drew a line from one side down to the other side, and that is going to be a highlight. And you have to do it slowly so that it gives the alcohol ink a chance to get into the paper and into the ink and spread it out a little bit. And you don't want to color it, you just want to draw a straight line, and that's going to create a highlight for you. So as you can see, on the second one I changed my technique because I felt like there was just too much ink going on to the paper for this small area. So I did my dark area first, and then I blended it out with the light, and then I went back in there with that one line of the highlight with the 0, and then I'll just remove some color. And it's a good way if you don't have 3 of a single color, which I tend to use 3, but if I only have 2, like in this case, I just use the 0 to create the highlight. So I'm working around the snow on the letters because I'm going to go back in with some liquid applique. For my snowflakes, I'm doing these in B000, just kind of going in there and coloring it in, not really anything, no shading or anything like that, just coloring. And sorry I got off camera a little bit there, but just coloring the stars with Daffodil Delight. Now here's my liquid applique, and it's a squeezable pen. You just squeeze it and then the white liquid comes out the tip. And it does not dry quickly at all, so you have plenty of time. I'm showing you how I do this here. You just squeeze it and it comes out really just like almost like a glue. And I'm going to speed this up. Oh, I had forgotten a little part there in the green, so I had to go back. Alright, and so the next step is to take your heat tool, and the best thing is to hold it right above it so that it doesn't sort of puff up to the side. You want it to puff straight up. So as you heat it, it dries and puffs up and it looks like snow. And I went in there with a paper piercer because I wanted to spread it out a little bit, but it wasn't spreading very well, so I went back in there. You can always add more. And if you wanted to, you could also kind of rip it off and start over. So I did this actually 3 times because then I realized you could see the black line above the snow, and I didn't want that because the snow is supposed to be covering the letter. So I went back in and covered those black lines at the top. And then one more hit with the heat tool, and then it's good to go. Oh, and then I decided to do the snowflakes too, just the little dots. So I just added dots everywhere, and then applied my heat, and they all puffed up. And it happens pretty quickly. Alright, I slowed it down so you could see how it puffs up. It's very cool. And this little tube has lasted me quite a while. I've had it for several years. And I generally use it for snow. Alright, so what I did was I trimmed off those 1/2 inch edges at the top and at the bottom. And now I'm just going to basically just put some Versamark all over it just by dipping it directly into the ink pad. And then I'm spreading some Ranger Fine, I think it's called Super Fine Gold embossing powder. And I wanted to get a gold that was going to be really shiny, and I'm really happy with this one because I've had golds that look a little tarnished, but this one's a really pretty, I slowed it down a little bit, a really pretty shiny gold. I was debating between getting the Ranger and getting the Stampin' Up, and I ended up getting the Ranger because it said it was super fine, so I thought that would make a difference, and it did. So I'll have a link to that on my blog in the supply section. Alright, now I'm going to assemble these pieces. I'm going to put adhesive in the middle like a tape runner, and then my two-way glue pen because I want to make sure that it's pretty flat down on my paper. And I've got a piece of 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch cherry cobbler Stampin' Up cardstock. And I know I've mentioned this before, but cherry cobbler is the best Christmas color. I just love it. Alright, I didn't want to smush my puffiness here because I really just finished doing it. So I decided to put the adhesive on the cherry paper instead of vice versa. And the final piece there. And then lastly, I'm going to adhere this to a piece of 4 1/4 by 5.5 folded cardstock. And then I actually ended up adding some stickles on the stars, and that's what shows in the photo on my blog. So anyway, here it is, the finished card. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next week. Thanks for watching.